So it's the resolution revolution. What should I be shooting in? You know, should I be shooting in standard definition, HD, full HD, 2.7K, 4K, 5K, 8K, apparently now 12K? I don't know! Hi, Ridge here, and today we're going to talk about what resolution you should be shooting in if you are a content creator. There are two things you need to keep in mind. The first thing is, what platform are you releasing this on? Is it a huge cinema and you need like 8 to 12K? If so, unsubscribe to my channel because I'm super jealous. Or are you releasing it like the majority of us are and just releasing it online? Well, people will be watching it on a maximum screen of maybe like a 52-inch monitor. But if you're an education channel, guess what? Most people are probably gonna be watching it on their phone. Ridge, you don't need to say that. That's just over the top. Everybody knows you're holding it. I just needed to say, Ryan, that it was a phone that I was holding. Because the screen wasn't on. No, it doesn't matter if the screen's on. They're going to know it's a phone. They're going to know it's a phone. He gets so picky sometimes. Stop thinking your audience is stupid. Anyway, so what should you be shooting in? There's a lot of debate about this, but the biggest question that I want to encourage you guys is think about it in a very, very simple form. Is most people probably, if you're on YouTube and you're watching my video right now, or you're creating for Instagram or TikTok, they're going to be watching on such a small screen. Why do you need incredibly high resolution? You don't. There's your answer. Thanks for watching. Just kidding, we're actually going to talk about it more. Tons of different resolutions that we shoot at. I want to talk about pixels just for a real brief moment, and I also want to encourage you, if you're super interested in this, make sure you just do a lot of research on it because there's a lot of information and you can tweak your footage to get that 10% to look like 50% if you go through all the work and effort. But I have a feeling, since probably a lot of you shoot on your phones, no need. A pixel basically is a placeholder for information. And when you record your information, and I'm not making this up, you can actually do research. I'll try to remember to put some links in the description. When your camera is recording, they're on the actual sensor of your camera, regardless of what it is. There is things called photo sites, and that becomes the pixel, the placeholder for information. And what most cameras do when they shoot the information, if it's not raw information, your sensor is going to do what they call interpret or pixel interpolation. Hello everyone, my name is Donnie McDougall, and Ryan had actually reached out to me and asked me to try and explain sensors because apparently someone named Ridge wasn't explaining it very well. So I thought I'd break it down in a real simple form using crayons. First of all, this is obviously way scaled down. You know, we've only got a couple of actual pixels, or what are called photo sites, on a sensor. But what we're going to do is we're going to break down this in a real simple form. And we'll talk about compression. The first thing I want to talk about is color space. Each one of these photo sites basically has 3 pieces of information. And it's also signified by 444. Now that's the absolute raw information. And one of them is basically your color space, one is light and shadow, kind of like known as gamma, and the other information is basically more color space. And so when you have a 444, that's basically raw data. Now of course, this is really very large files. When you record total 4:4 color space with no compression, that's going to make your files incredibly heavy and very, very large. You're going to be filling up your cards so fast. That's why compression was invented. Ridge was correct in to say that a pixel basically is a placeholder for information, and if it isn't good quality information, then you don't got a good quality image regardless of how many pixels you have. For example, I want you to think about if somebody asked you to make a mosaic of the Mona Lisa, but they only gave you 2 colors, and then they gave somebody else tons of other colors, they could do a lot better job than you. And that is just basically the way it is. It's how accurate your color space is and how accurate and good quality your actual pixel information is. Ridge talked about frame interpolation. So if it's not shooting in 444, it's always going to be used some form of compression, which basically means that if it takes and it says, hey, this pixel's blue, and this pixel's blue, and this pixel's blue, what we're going to do is we're going to kind of average this pixel, and there we go. And that's what happens. And basically, essentially what happens is your camera is going to just be making guesses the whole time, depending on exactly what compression rate you're shooting at. Of course, RAW is going to be shooting at full depth information, and you're going to pick some sort of compression that's going to down res that or compress that file where it's going to make guesses. And that's perfectly fine. It gives you a lower bit rate, but it's still perfectly acceptable. Because the other thing to keep in mind too, monitors and screens do the exact same thing. So you may have like maybe a 4K image here, but when you display it on a monitor, it's going to do the same thing. It's going to basically break it down for you, and it's going to re-guess those pixels and then display it, because there are very few monitors out there that actually have the appropriate amount of pixels as there are actual pixels in the content that's being played. So what it does is it just does interpolation just like this and makes a guess and then plays you the best image that it thinks it knows how. So hopefully that was helpful information. I'm sorry that Ridge wasn't able to explain it better for you, and hopefully in the future he can get his together and actually do a better job. Again, if you're really interested in tweaking this little thing in filmmaking, great, go for it. But in the end, it doesn't really matter, because guess what? The reason why when you switch 4K looks better is because it's a higher bit rate. So the biggest question is, if you want your footage just to be just like that extra 5% better, export it at a higher bit rate. How do you do that? More videos coming up about bit rate, but as of now, let's break it down real simple. Do you need to be shooting in 4K, or do you need to be shooting in just HD? HD is perfectly fine for these small screens that most people will probably be watching your videos on, or even if they're watching it on a larger 12 or 17-inch monitor, it's gonna be perfectly fine. Most monitors don't even display good enough photo sites to even display your video good enough anyway. How many times have you gone into grandma's house and their monitor looks like garbage, and it's like, well, okay, the video actually looks a lot better than this. I mean, at least that's happened to me. Don't forget, it's not pixels that make your video good or bad. The only justification I can think to actually shoot in 4K is if you'll be cropping in, or if you know your audience is going to be watching it on beautiful monitors because you're shooting beautiful scenery or something like that. Other than that, HD is perfectly fine to shoot in, at least as of now. Now maybe in 10, 15 years, 4K will be necessary, but as it stands now, I don't see a need for it. So I'd recommend just don't worry about it, shoot in HD, because even over pixel information, there's three things that are gonna make your video pop. First of all is sound quality. You have to have absolutely good sound quality. Second of all is shot composition. How you're shooting, what you're shooting, and then third is lighting. It's making sure your scene is lit well. No pixel amount will compensate for bad cinematography. So if you're interested in increasing your knowledge on sound quality, make sure you click on this video here, and make sure you click on this video here for good shot composition. And hopefully through this information and simplified filming, you can become successful. And in the meantime, don't forget, always be creating.